Hi, everyone. This is Heather Hodges. I'm an organizational psychologist. Welcome to my show. This is the place where we say I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. Today's episode is part of a series of podcasts on the Enneagram where I'll explore each of the 9 types with their wings and their stress and security numbers and how they might show up at work. And I'll end each episode with potential blind spots for each number, along with some growth strategies. And as we begin, I want to be candid and let you know that I'll probably offend someone on each of these 9 podcasts about the Enneagram. And here's why. Because it's easier to know your number based on what you get wrong instead of what you get right. So when I talk about your number, you may feel like all I'm doing is highlighting the negatives about your number. I'm not. I will talk about the virtues and the superpowers too. It will just seem like I'm hammering home the negatives, and it won't seem like I've done that with the other numbers, but I'll share the virtues and vices of each of the numbers equally. It just hits closer to home with your number. I am an equal opportunity offender. So now that we've got that out of the way, today's episode is on Enneagram 8s. And 8s are called the challenger or the active controller or protector. And their virtue is mercy and their vice is lust. And this is not sexual lust. They are lusty for life and big adventures, and they are addicted to kind of intensity and big experiences. And the basic desire or need for an 8 is to avoid being controlled. And they are self-confident and decisive and willful, and they can be confrontational. Now, the basic fear of 8s is of being harmed or betrayed or controlled by others. And so their key motivation is justice. And they want to be in charge of their own environment and to stay in control of their own situation. So 8s are in the gut or the anger triad, and they are in the aggressive stance along with 3s and 7s. And 8s are a force of nature. They have a strong presence and personality, and they value being in control. And they're also guarded, but caring and protective of those around them. And they are resourceful, they are tough, they are straight talking and decisive, but they can also slip into being domineering. And 8s are larger than life. And even like small, little, petite female 8s, they come across big in the room. They just have this presence about them. So when they walk in the room, you just got to know that they have arrived. So 8s have a need to control their own environment. And so this can come across to the rest of the world as being confrontational and intimidating. Now, I don't usually hear this from male 8s, but female 8s tell me all the time that people find them intimidating. But a lot of times that information doesn't resonate with them. They don't understand why people might find them intimidating. And then here's the thing. I think 8s come across as intimidating because, first of all, they aren't often intimidated by others. So they stand their ground and they have all of that big energy, which can feel overpowering to others. And the other side of this is they respect people who will go all out and have as much energy and passion as they do. And so they have this larger than life view of what's possible in the world. And so they want to have their power met, power for power. And 8s are great cheerleaders. And when you give something 100% of your effort, you'll have the support of an 8. But if you aren't fully committed to something, or if you're kind of only halvesies doing something, you start to look fuzzy and invisible to an 8. And it's just hard for them to get behind you because they just don't see you. So you blend into the background. You're a beige wall to them at that point. And so one of the reasons for this is 8s have a tendency to see everything in extremes. It's either good or bad. It's black or white. It's right or wrong. It's friend or foe. And so a lot of times we think of 8s as bossy and wanting to control everything. But what they really want is just to be in control of their own lives. You think they want to control you and everything in their vicinity, but what they really want is for you not to control them. And there's a subtle difference there that we shouldn't miss. And that's one of the reasons that I don't like the term boss when it comes to naming Enneagram 8s. I like leader or challenger or active controller or protector. I think those are just better fits. So 8s are in the gut or the anger triad with 9s and 1s, and all 3 of these numbers work with anger just a little differently. And 8 anger, it's straight up and right beneath the surface. So if you just kind of like gently scratch an 8, that's where you get the anger. And when an 8 is angry, you don't have to guess, you know it. Their anger can flare at any given moment, but it doesn't usually last long. And 8s, one of the things that you need to remember, and I'm talking to 8s here, your anger is a secondary emotion. Something else comes first. So do the work to see if you can figure out what that primary emotion is. What's behind the anger? Is it fear? Is it loss of control? Is it rejection? Is it vulnerability? What is your anger masking? Because a lot of times, 8s will use their anger and all of that passion and all of that energy and all of that fervor to hide their vulnerability. And they give off the impression of being strong and powerful because they are, but they are also capable of imparting that power to other people. And some people even get energy and strength and confidence just from being close to 8s or from working alongside them. It's kind of like drafting off of the lead cyclist in the Tour de France. They have enough energy and inertia to pull a lot of people along with them. But one of the most surprising things about 8s that you might not ever know is that 8s are very tenderhearted. And so they put on all of that strength and all of that protection on the outside to protect their soft inner side. I call it having an exoskeleton or like a suit of armor. So 8s have this tough exterior that's really crunchy, but they are tender and mushy on the inside. And since 8s aren't very trusting of others, that means that very few people will get to see that soft, tender side of 8s. So if you do get to see the tender side of an 8, you've been given a real gift, because that means the 8 trusts you. And that's also why you'll rarely ever see an 8 cry. Or if they do cry, they say, gosh, I hate this. I hate crying. Because in their mind, it's weakness. But 8s, you need to learn that vulnerability is not weakness. It is strength. And we all cherish that about you. So when you do see an 8 cry, that means that they feel safe and that they trust you. Now, at their best, 8s are self-mastering, and they use all of their strength to improve the lives of others, and they are altruistic and they are inspiring. Mother Teresa was an 8, but she was so mature and spiritually transformed that she appeared to the world to be a 2. And after she passed, and we got access to her journals and we were able to read her innermost thoughts. And we realized that her motivations were those of an 8. She gave everything she had, not out of a need for power, but of pure sacrificial love. And so she had the heart of a nurturer, but the strength of a warrior. And most people think of 8s as aggressive and dominant. But Mother Teresa shows that what happens with an 8 when they transcend their fear of vulnerability and step fully into selfless service. So instead of controlling out of fear, she used her power for love. And 8s have a strong sense of justice and truth, and they often take the side of the weak or the oppressed or the marginalized. And in fact, they are usually motivated by justice, and they kind of instinctively know when dishonesty or injustice is at work. And 8s will address those kinds of situations openly and directly, and they have no trouble being confrontational, and they will stand up to injustice and go toe-to-toe with anyone. And when 8s commit themselves to a project or righting an injustice, they can bring enormous energy to it. In fact, 8s have more physical energy than any other number on the Enneagram. 8s have this crazy motor that just drives them. They are the energizer bunnies of the world. However, 8s are the most misunderstood number on the Enneagram. And without question, I think female 8s are particularly misunderstood. And a good way to think about it is if you take all of these qualities that I've been talking about, all of these strength and leadership characteristics that I just described, and you put those on a man, we would say that he's strong and confident. He's such a good leader and he's taking us where we want to go. But if you put all of those gifts on a woman, then she's a witch. And so female 8s come to me and they say, people have been calling me the B word since I was in 4th grade, and I just don't get it. I don't understand that. Or they will tell me that they were called bossy when they were little, but their brothers were called little leaders for doing the exact same thing. And we have got to do a better job of honoring and recognizing the leadership gifts of all people, all Enneagram 8s, males and females alike. So I'm on a mission, especially with the way we call little girls bossy, but we call little boys good little leaders. We've got to stop doing that. Don't call little girls little bossy pants. Instead, recognize their leadership gifts. And while we're on this topic, I think it is important to clarify that 8s, they are not bullies. They are the ones who stand up to bullies and call bullies out because bullies are afraid. 8s, they're not afraid of much. They are afraid of being too vulnerable. They are afraid of betrayal, but they aren't afraid of much else. Okay, let's talk about wings. So your wings are on either side of your core number. So everyone has access to both wings. But you may be overly reliant on one wing over the other. And your work is to grow both of your wings so that you are balanced and mature. So an 8 with a strong 7 wing. So this is a wild combination. They are outgoing, they're energetic, they are fun, but they can also be impulsive and reckless. And these 8s, they live life to the fullest. They are the most energetic of all numbers, and they are the most entrepreneurial because they're not afraid of taking risks. And an 8 with a strong 9 wing, they make it a little more challenging for the rest of the world to know just when their temper will erupt. So they have a need to be more private, and they will build strict boundaries around themselves. And they're usually more open to collaboration rather than competition. And so an 8 with a 9 wing, they are able to see both sides of everything. So they become more successful leaders and negotiators. But what does it look like when an 8 is balanced and they integrate both wings? So people who have done a lot of psychological and self-development work, they can consciously access both wings. So this is our goal. So when an 8 has high integration of their 7 wing, they are able to see their dominance as a choice rather than just a default position. And they are also a little softer, and they can lighten up a little and feel more joyful and bright. And one of the things that I've heard a lot while coaching 8s is they don't know how to let their hair down. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to come off of that intensity. So if that is you, then working to grow your 7 wing can help. And on the other side, when an 8 has integrated their 9 wing, they are able to project more interpersonal warmth and empathy. And you're more likely to slow down and listen openly and attentively to other people's ideas. And so you're also more in tune to group consensus, and you're able to express yourself with less of a sense of absolute certainty, which makes it just a little bit easier for other people to hear you and collaborate with you. Okay, now let's take a look at stress and security, or the stress number and the growth number. So what do the arrows mean? So when an 8 is in stress, they can take on 5 energy to take care of themselves. Now, just because you're in stress doesn't mean you always go to the low side of your stress number. We can all choose to take care of ourselves in a positive way when we travel the line to our stress number. But if an 8 goes to the low side of 5 in stress, they can just all of a sudden become secretive and low energy, and they will often withdraw. And I call it going into a cave, just like backing up into the cave, and the rest of the world, they can just do whatever they want to do. The 8's just going to be in their cave. And in this space, they can also experience insomnia, and they often neglect to take care of themselves. They eat poorly and they don't exercise, and they can fall into destructive habits like just self-forgetting and addictions. But when an 8 is in stress and they choose to go to the high side of 5, they also need more alone time and they withdraw from the world. But a lot of times they might start reading and researching and gathering more information and data like a healthy 5. In fact, I have known a lot of 8s who were in this period of deep stress, and they went back to school for another degree, or they just continued their professional development. So they channeled their stress in positive directions. Now, on the other side, let's take a look at the other arrow. So when 8s are in a good place and they are on a growth trajectory, they move towards 2, which is their growth or their release number. And this is a beautiful move to watch because these controlling 8s, they become more open-hearted and caring like healthy 2s. So think of Mother Teresa. So when 8s are in this space, they are not so concerned with hiding their tender, gentle natures, and so they trust more easily. And so 8s, listen up, at the heart of your journey towards integration is the lesson of generosity and love that the Enneagram 2 has to give you. And this is the lesson of servant leadership, because your innermost fear is the fear of vulnerability, and being open to love and being loved is one of the most vulnerable spaces imaginable. Okay, what do 8s look like at work? So eights are found in every profession, and they make good prosecutors and defense attorneys and coaches and missionaries and business people and entrepreneurs and organizational builders. And they like to be in charge and unencumbered by limitations that somebody else might impose on them. So eights often start their own businesses and they like to work for themselves. In fact, I know a lot of eights who are serial entrepreneurs. And so if you have an eight on your team, they can be a huge asset or a lot of work. And sometimes they're both. And if you're fortunate enough to work with an eight and have an eight on your team, you need to keep the lines of communication open and the expectations clear. And do not change the rules without letting them know. Now, an eight's first response to anything is, what am I going to do? And so this can be tricky at work because other numbers are asking, what do I think? Or what do I feel? And so I think this is one of the reasons that threes, sevens, and eights get along pretty well at work because they all are about doing. In fact, threes, sevens, and eights are known as the executive trio because they often end up in leadership positions. And sometimes these three numbers struggle with teammates who seem to be slowed down by feeling or thinking before they act. But it's important for eights to remember that there is a time for taking immediate action and a time to slow down and feel or think something all the way through first before taking action. So even though eights are leaders, they will follow a strong leader as long as it's clear that that leader knows where they're going, that everything's under control. So eights have very little patience for a leader who waffles or lacks strength to commit to a course of action. So if you have an eight on your team, you need to step up and lead with conviction or hand them off to someone who can. Now, eights, like threes and sevens, they need to stay active and they get bored easily. So you don't want a bored eight. So they are like a puppy who's been cooped up in the house all day. So keep the eight busy or they will gnaw the house down to the studs. But here's the thing. When your back is against the wall, you want an eight on your team. They are creative, they are smart, they are fearless, they are terrific problem solvers, and they will come in early and stay late and sleep on the floor until the job gets done. Now, we all have blind spots. And so here are a few blind spots that you may experience if you are an eight. And so I'm talking directly to the eights right now. First of all, eights, your energy may be way stronger and way bigger than you realize. You may not appreciate just how intimidating you seem to others. And believe it or not, it's not just the weak or the timid people who may feel threatened or overwhelmed by your presence. So pay attention to how people are responding to you and make adjustments. You might need to dial it back. Next, eights, you can be blind to how much force is really necessary. So you sometimes apply more force than you need to just to get the job done. Sometimes a light touch is actually more effective than a heavy hand. And finally, eights, you may need to replay this last one several times as you work with it. You ready? You are usually blind to how your impulse to protect others is actually about protecting your own vulnerability and projecting that onto other people as a way of addressing it as a distance. So your desire to protect others, it's a positive quality, but sometimes you're doing it to help mask your own vulnerability. And this happens when you unconsciously project feelings of weakness onto others, and then you go into action to support and protect them. So it's good for you to realize that the urge to protect others, it can be a sign that you need to pay attention to your own needs and your own hidden vulnerabilities. All right, eights, here are 5 growth tips for development for your life and leadership. Number 1, keep your cool. Never raise your voice at work. And as frustrated as you may feel, and even if you do not raise your voice or yell, you may not realize how strong you come across. So monitor your vocal tone, your body posture, your presence, and dial it back from like an 11 back to a 6 or a 7 so the rest of the world can hear you. Number 2, be careful not to blame others. So when a project does not go as planned, be careful that your tone, your choice of words, your line of questioning, and just your general approach does not make others feel blamed. Number 3, always consider opposing points of view. So ask yourself 10 times a day, who and what am I not listening to? Who and what am I not listening to? What am I missing? And number 4, take care of yourself physically. 8, you tend to run yourself into the ground. So be sure to get a full night's sleep, eat healthy meals, and exercise regularly. And exercise in moderation. 8, you tend to overdo everything, including exercise. So moderation is the key. And number 5, slow down your impulse to take action. Your first instinct is, what do I need to do about something? And you do that in every situation. But take time to think and feel and share your feelings of vulnerability. Begin by acknowledging your vulnerability. It is a strength, not a weakness. Okay, there you have it, Enneagram 8s. This is the first in a series of episodes exploring each of the 9 Enneagram types. So thank you for joining me in this conversation. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review or a comment, and share it with someone who could use a dose of creativity and inspiration. So until next time, keep saying I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. May you be wildly creative in your life and leadership. I'll see you soon.